and good afternoon. I know the mid-afternoon coffee is pressing on everybody's minds and certainly on mine as well, so I'll try not to detain you overly long. But I think this is a good news story about a convergence of animal breeding, technology and science with animal health, and hopefully it'll be an interesting story that you'll hear over the next 20 minutes. That's the title, as Jack just said. I'd like to divide my presentation into 4 parts. A bit of background to Animal Health Ireland, which will be a very new organisation to those of you from outside of the country and even to those of you from Ireland. We're still fairly much the new kids on the block. Some words in relation to animal health and profitability, and we have done some economic analysis on these issues in conjunction with partner organisations. And then really the meat of the talk is in relation to how we have sought to harness the power of the ICBF database to deliver herd health programs, particularly 2 programs, and one in particular, BVD, bovine viral diarrhea, is the one I want to particularly concentrate on, but also somatic cells. And then a couple of reflections, 2 slides on reflections just in relation to the relationship between Animal Health Ireland and ICBF, and some of our reflections in terms of the power of the database that we now have at our disposal. So first of all, the background to Animal Health Ireland. It was officially launched in January of 2009 and incorporated as a company limited by guarantee in May of 2009. So we're just about now at our 3rd anniversary as a company. It's a not-for-profit organisation. All of the additional funding goes back into the objects of the company, which are to improve the profitability and sustainability and competitiveness of the Irish livestock sector. The budget currently is about €1 million per annum. It's a public-private partnership. 50% of the funding comes from the Department of Agriculture, and the other 50% comes from our stakeholders, our private sector stakeholders. And I'll show you who those people are, those organisations are, in another slide. It's important to realise that the funding from the department is matched. So if we receive no funding from private sector sources, we receive no funding from the department. So there is a real imperative, I think, to show that we deliver to the private sector. In terms of the size of the organisation, it has a board of 7 directors. It has 6 staff, including myself, and there are 32 member organisations, stakeholder organisations. So I don't expect people will be able to see the detail on that slide there, but it is perhaps important to point out that the organisations come from all of the important stakeholder sectors. So farm organisations, for those of you outside the country, that would be the farm representative organisations, the unions, the farmers' unions, and so on. The dairy and beef processing sector, and many of those companies are represented here. Government and state agencies, that includes obviously the Department of Agriculture, but also Teagasc and Bord Bia. Bord Bia being the organisation charged with the marketing of Irish food and meat products. And then the professional and advisory and support services, and that very much includes ICBF, which is really the subject of this particular talk. Also the Department of Agriculture, the Veterinary Lab Services, UCD, University College Dublin, and Veterinary Ireland. So the remit of the organisation when it was created in 2009 was to pursue effective control strategies for the important non-regulated diseases of livestock. And the regulated diseases, in shorthand, could be described as being tuberculosis, brucellosis, and BSE. And pretty much everything else in the cattle sphere is a non-regulated disease. And a little bit like Jay, we've been going through a period of strategic reflection recently as well. And we've realised that with the resources at our disposal, we need to narrow our remit. So in our mission statement for the 2012 to 14 strategy, we talk about enhancing value for cattle farmers. So we've narrowed the focus, deliberately narrowed the focus from livestock to specifically cattle. As resources permit in the future, that can be looked at again. I mentioned our human resources earlier on, and there they are in an organogram form. We have the board of directors and the member organisations on the left-hand side, myself and my team, the second from the left. And then really what is the meat of the organisation, the driving force in the organisation in terms of the development of programmes are our technical working groups. And these are groups of individuals who come together free of charge. They don't charge us for our services, but these are domestically experts within Ireland in their particular fields. And these individuals select themselves, they're peer selected. All of them will have some background in the relevant area and will have usually published and so on in the relevant area. And they create the technical resources that underpin the various programs that we deliver. On the right-hand side, the extreme right, then you can see that we have 2 implementation groups. And that's, I suppose, where the science meets the politics and the reality of taking something that's feasible technically and translating it into something that will work and deliver on the ground. And we have 2 of those implementation groups, one for BVD and one for the somatic cell count reduction program, CellCheck. So again, I suppose that's the process whereby the science gradually interfaces with the politics and the dynamics of the industry. So we have research and deliberation, and then we come together to agree a national position. And that has been done in the case of BVD, where we're now coming to that point in relation to Johne's disease as well. We set out a plan of action. We actually have published our business plans on our website, so they're open to anyone to inspect. And then I suppose on the right-hand side, the deployment, that ultimately falls down to myself and my team, but also to the implementation groups to ensure that we deliver on the plan of action. When we started out life as an organization in late 2008, beginning of 2009, we really didn't have an idea as to what the priorities in the area of the non-regulated diseases ought to be. So to begin to investigate what they might be, we did 3 things, which have all been published in a peer-reviewed paper, which is available again on our website. And you can see there in the left-hand column, that's the Delphi study. So that was a prolonged conversation, you could call it, with a number of industry experts. And in parallel with that, we carried out 2 extensive surveys using the ICBF Herd Plus system with dairy farmers and beef farmers. And from that, we drew up a menu of priorities. And you'll see that infertility there ranks very highly on the list of priorities. But because of resource issues to date, we haven't been able to progress a program in relation to infertility. We are having conversations around that, and we do hope that we will be in a position to do so quite quickly. But the next 2 on the list there, the udder health, milk quality, and BVD programs have been progressed substantially. And I'll give you some more information on those very shortly. So one of the other outcomes of our strategic analysis or reflection was not only that we would concentrate on cattle exclusively, but that we would put the majority of our resources, 90% of our resources, into tackling 4 particular areas. Those are BVD, somatic cell counts, Johne's disease, and IBR. And business plans for each of those are available from our website. So we set out the timelines that we foresee in relation to each of these 4 programs. Okay, I think a number of speakers have mentioned this is all about the money and follow the money. And I think that's very important that we do have, before we start a program, that we have a clear understanding that the benefits of eradication or control will actually exceed the costs. And if we contrast, I suppose, with some of the programs that have been run in this and other countries in the past, the cost-benefit analysis didn't always precede the initiation of the program. So hopefully, in this case, that has been addressed. In terms of BVD eradication, we carried out a cost-benefit analysis. We didn't carry it out directly ourselves. We commissioned it from the Scottish Agricultural Colleges, which have a long track record in the delivery of cost-benefit analysis, and particularly so in BVD. And the figures that emerge from that study are very compelling. They show that the total losses to the industry, annual losses to the industry, due to BVD are 102 million euro. They show that the eradication costs on an annualized basis would be 10 million euro. So the benefit-cost ratio is 10 to 1. And the overall payback period is just over half a year. So I think these are really compelling figures, and anybody with an industry background or a business background, if you're offered a return on investment of 10 to 1, I think most of us would be jumping at that. In terms of somatic cell counts, then, this is a piece of research that has been carried out by Teagasc, by Una Geary, Lawrence Chalou, Thea Hennessy, and Teagasc. And this has been looking at the inverse relationship between dairy farm profitability and the level of somatic cell on that particular farm. And you can see that in the left-hand column there, for this particular herd, which was modelled on, I think, on a 94 cow herd, that at less than 100,000 cells per mil, the net farm profit is €31,000 just about. And these figures take account of the value of labour, so the labour charges have been deducted. So they may not exactly correspond with what you know to be the typical profitability figures for Irish dairy farms. But at the other extreme then, for a herd producing milk at over 400,000 cells per mil, the net farm profit has fallen to €11,700. And our rule of thumb is that for an average dairy herd, for example, a herd producing in that band 300 to 400,000, not necessarily the average, but a herd not untypical in that 300 to 400,000, if it can reduce its somatic cell count production to the 100 to 200,000 band, there's a gain in there of at least 1 cent per litre, which is very significant. Okay, in terms of what we've done, the work we've done together with ICBF on the database, I'm going to concentrate specifically on the BVD program because it's the one that we've advanced to the greatest degree. And in outline, the BVD eradication program, which is currently in a voluntary phase, and we're currently sitting down with the Department of Agriculture to draft legislation for a compulsory phase beginning in 1st of January next year. But it's currently in a voluntary format. And the flow is as follows, and maybe to draw your attention, first of all, to the photograph of the tag in the top right. Our initial intention and our planning up to September last year was that this program, the diagnostic test, would be delivered through the use of the official ID tag. You can see that the tag there, those of you who are from Ireland will see that that tag immediately is not one of the official ID tags. So what happened was that and some of the people attending this conference will be more familiar with the details than I am, but the outcome of the tendering process last year for the official ID tag didn't result in a successful candidate. So we were left in a situation where we weren't able to deliver a program using the official ID tag. That tender process is now being rerun, and we would hope that, in fact, we firmly believe that by 1st January next year, in fact, well before that, when the tender is resolved, that there will be an official ID tag which has been modified and capable of taking a tissue sample from a bovine animal. And that will have a couple of benefits. It obviously reduces the logistical challenge of inserting 3 tags in the bovine's ear or ears, and it also reduces the cost, because the marginal cost of the modified official version of the tag will be about €1 per unit lower than the button tag, we estimate. Okay, so currently the position is that the farmer orders the sample tags, tags the calves in the usual way, but submits the ear punch then to a laboratory. And we've gone through a process of designating laboratories for this particular purpose. The results are reported from the laboratory back to the ICBF database, and from there they're reported back to the farmer and to the farmer's advisor if the advisor is authorised to see the results as well. The results are also transmitted to the cattle marts, and no positive animals should be presented at cattle marts, and we've put in place protocols to ensure that that doesn't happen. But at the marts, increasingly now, the marts are able to display electronically the BVD test result for the cattle being sold. That's been rolled out initially through the ICOS marts, but the associated livestock marts and other marts are also adopting that practice. So by the end of the year, all of the marts will be able to display a BVD test result at the point of sale. And the program will cycle through this pattern for the first 3 years, a program that's based primarily on tissue tag testing plus follow-up testing, before moving into a second phase, which is based on monitoring, primarily using bulk tag testing and serological screening. So a much less intensive phase in years 4, 5, and 6. Just to give you some numbers, and bear in mind that this is a voluntary program in this year, and we're talking about a total calf population registered in a typical year of about 2 million animals. So currently, and these figures are accurate as of last week, the number of tissue-enabled tags ordered was 563,000. The number of herds participating, about 9,500. and the split between dairy and beef about 57-43. So the number of tags ordered is very positive. It represents over a quarter of the calf registrations. There is a big challenge in terms of gearing up to the compulsory phase, looking at the number of herds involved, because the total number of breeding herds that we would need to see involved in this program would be of the order of 80,000, whereas we have about 10,000 enrolled in the voluntary phase of the program. So there's an undoubted communications challenge facing us for the second half of this year. In terms of the test result then, about 370,000 tags have been tested, 369,000 of which are negative, and then 2,200 have given a positive result. And that gives you an animal level prevalence of 0.6%. So our cost-benefit analysis was modelled on a prevalence of 0.75%. So the actual prevalence is running somewhat lower than the model prevalence. Their current herd prevalence is just short of 14%, and we would expect this to tick up to something about 25%, particularly in a compulsory program. So about 1 in 4 herds will have at least one BVD-positive PI animal. And looking at it from the point of view of the ICBF database, those are the flows into and out of the database. The green arrows represent the flows inward through the laboratories, from vets to labs and from farmers to labs into the ICBF database. ICBF, the database is also connected, as Kevin was showing us, to the department's AIM system, CMMS there, but AIM, the Animal Identification and Movement System. And then the outflows from the ICBF database to Animal Health Ireland, to cattle marts, directly to farmers, and back to vets. And specifically what ICBF delivers to the programme is, first of all, the receipt of standardised laboratory test data in a standard format from designated labs. So all of these labs from 1st of July of this year will also be ISO accredited. We won't designate any lab that doesn't have ISO 17025 for the relevant test standards. ICBF then integrates the test data with the AIM movement data. They issue text messages to the participating herds with the various results, and also a standard letter in the case of a positive animal. For inconclusive or no tissue results, the farmers communicated by means of the SMS message. As I mentioned earlier, then the data are exported to the marts via the department's AHCS, or Animal Health Computer System, for display on the electronic or standard mart boards. The ICBF also produces weekly updates to the implementation group so that we can refine and modify the program as we go on. It undertakes forward tracing and backward tracing of the PI animals and notification of the herd owners of the results of that tracing. It's now involved in a detailed program evaluation mode, so we're looking at the program data generated by the first 6 months to inform and refine the program, which we will deliver on a compulsory phase from the 1st of January next year. And the database produces individual herd reports. So every farmer participating in the program this year, before the end of the year, will receive an individualized herd report, which will clarify exactly where the farm stands in terms of its BVD status and what more the farmer needs to do to show compliance with the guidelines in the voluntary phase of the program. And then finally, in development at the moment, the system is capable of producing test lists for vets that go out to farms, so they're pre-armed with the lists of cattle that need to be tested. So, thanks, Jack. 2 slides on reflections, and these reflections really are in relation to the specifics of the BVD program and our involvement with ICBF, and then more generally the working relationship between AHI and ICBF. Well, first of all, it's been very important to us that the ICBF database is as extensive as it is. It covers 90% of the breeding animals in the country. It has a proven track record. So as I said, 2 years ago we were the new kids on the block. We didn't have the resources to develop a database system and probably wouldn't have been trusted with one anyway. I think as our credibility is growing, that situation is changing. But certainly having had access to a tried and trusted database such as the ICBF database has been essential to putting this program in place. Right through the process of developing the database, it's been iterative between Animal Health Ireland and ICBF. We develop, through our program manager, Dr. David Graham, we develop the program, the actual disease eradication program, and ICBF takes that knowledge and converts it into software programming. And that process has been very adaptive and flexible over the years. Had we gone to a commercial provider, I shudder to think how many reiterations of the specification we would have had to go through and what the cost implications for Animal Health Ireland would have been. Because ICBF is a stakeholder with Animal Health Ireland, that hasn't had a cost impact on us. It's been a cost-effective way from an industry perspective. It's been a cost-effective way of developing a control program because we're building on an existing resource. The ICBF database was developed for animal recording and for genetic improvement reasons, but it can be, as has been shown, it can be quite readily adapted for animal health purposes as well. We haven't had to reinvent the wheel. So I think what we're seeing is a convergence of science and technology. The genetic science is beginning to look further all the time in greater depth at the relationship between disease resistance and genetics. And then on the technology side, the vehicle that we're using to capture a tissue sample for diagnostic purposes means that in a compulsory program we will have captured 2 million tissue samples, all of which have the potential to be archived and to be used for other purposes with the permission of the herd owner. And some of those purposes could include genetic evaluation. So I think we're seeing a real convergence of technology and science here. And then maybe at the more philosophical level, I think the two organizations share very similar objectives. We're both here for the good of the industry to improve profitability and the long-term sustainability of the cattle industry. And we most certainly share common values. We're both not-for-profit organizations and we operate on an industry good basis. And I'll finish on that point, Jack.
Thank you very much, Joe.